Good morning. This is Andrea Latuski, Director of Education at the American Fraternal Alliance. Welcome to our third webinar in our Branding Education Series, Consumer Perceptions of Fraternals, a Case Study. Thank you all for joining us. I have just a couple logistics before we get started. This webinar will be recorded. Early next week, you'll receive a link to the recording and a copy of the slides. We encourage you to share the recording and materials with anyone else in your organization. All the phone lines have been muted for our webinar this morning, so if you have any questions, please use the chat feature on your computer screen throughout the event. We'll have time at the end of the webinar for a Q&A with our presenters. We're also trying to make this a little bit more interactive, so there may be some points throughout the webinar where we'll ask for some of your feedback, so if you use the chat feature on your computer for that as well. Today, our speakers from the American Fraternal Alliance are Jeff Mitchell, Director of Public Affairs, and Taylor Conrad, Membership and Marketing Coordinator. We're going to get started right away with Jeff Mitchell.
Good morning. Today's webinar will take a case study format. Based on what we discussed last week, we want you to experience how easy it can be to start making even small, very minor changes that will help you begin to integrate the new fraternal brand into your society's marketing and communications. Today we're going to be going through some mocked up websites and social media communication and trying to decide as a group how we can improve upon what is presented and see if with just a little work we can adjust the language used to make it more interesting to consumers who may not be familiar with your organization. Now, the idea of these exercises is not to make all your web pages and communications identical. After all, you all have your own brands. Our goal is to begin to work in some of the copy points that our research has shown will work with consumers and to help them want to do business with your society. So as a preview, some of the things that we're going to go through on today's webinar include the word fraternal, to use it or not, how to work it in and work it around on your website. What about compliance? I need to use fraternal according to the regulations. That's another issue we'll look at. We'll also look at better communicating the benefits at a glance. We'll look at integration between fraternal and financial. How many clicks does it take to get to the center of a fraternal? Social media, and then we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers. Just before we dive in, we did want to reinforce that for this case study, we want you to think like a consumer, not a fraternal leader or staff member. You need to think back to a time when you didn't even know what a fraternal was. Because remember the research, less than 10% of consumers even know what a fraternal is or understand who we are, and only 4% are likely to want to do business with us based on the word fraternal. And many, many more of them have some issues surrounding the word fraternal or are still confused by the term. So let's get started. I want to let you know that today we have invented a fictitious fraternal, the Elbonian Pagan Society. This was a fraternal that was made up and used in a workshop at the 2017 annual meeting in the strategic planning session. So with that, let's turn it over to Taylor and she can get us started.
Hi everyone. So we're going to go over a quick review of what we covered briefly in the last webinar, mainly because we're going to use all of that information to make some changes today on this mock website that we created. So first of all, we covered, what we should call ourselves, Fraternal Benefit Society versus Community Life Insurer. There were some negative connotations of the word fraternal. It's masculine, it's uppity, it's referenced with colleges, as where consumers felt that community life insurers fit very well with the description of what a fraternal benefit society does. We also talked about communicating the attributes and the benefits of working with fraternal benefit societies, and both of those kind of brought up the same point, that consumers really like that we do both. We provide financial security
and give back to the community. And then we talked about some motivators and barriers of doing business with us. And so those motivators, that was the and factor, the fact that you do both, giving financial security and giving back to the community. And then, barriers, there was just a lot of confusion. A lot of it had to do with the way we describe ourselves, or the way that fraternal benefit societies is perceived, just purely based on the name itself. So we're going to dive a little deeper into that. So to be or not to be, should we be using the word fraternal, or what should we use instead? Can we use both? Maybe some people like Fraternal Benefit Society and they don't want to change it, so maybe you can just think about a different way to describe it in, bigger, wider copy on your About page. So this is a piece that we saw in the last webinar. Just to touch back on it, before consumers are seeing a description of what you do, just purely based on the name, people really enjoy Community Life Insurer versus Fraternal Benefit Society at 4%. So we're seeing an extremely high and positive response just from the name alone, just from those words mixed together. And there was a lot of discussion and skepticism about the word community, talking about, it's kind of vague. I don't know how people really feel about that. And, it's a hot button word for these consumers that we tested. It evoked a positive emotional response, which is really great to hear, especially after all of the negative and kind of confused responses that we got to the word fraternal. So, maybe just starting to think about the fact that community is just a really positive word to start using when we're talking to potential consumers. I also pulled some information from the last packet that we haven't quite covered yet, and we will in the next webinar, about perceptions of community. So what are consumers feeling about communities as a whole and the word community? And so, they feel people should be involved. They wish they had more time or money to help out. They wish it was easier to support causes and organizations. And they also want to be involved with companies that are involved in causes that are personally affecting them, that are socially responsible, that are doing good things for the world. And these ideas are all things that are wrapped together in the word community and people's thoughts on community. And these are things that we want consumers to be thinking about, that and factor, that giving back factor that fraternal benefit societies do. So this is where we're going to start talking about this mocked up website. And to just cover a few points, I know Jeff talked about it a little bit. This is a fake made up society that we actually used at annual meeting. If you were in one of the sessions where they were having some board issues, and so they were working through that. And so now this group has come to us, and we're going to work through how to, change up their language on their website and make it a little more clear. We are going to ask for some feedback. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some changes that could be made and what you think could be made. And as far as the design goes, I went very basic colors, basic fonts. So if you don't like the picture we chose, or you don't like the colors, that's okay. We realize that you're going to filter this through and you're going to put your own pictures. Maybe you show more cultural pictures. Maybe you show more volunteering pictures. And that's great. And we're mainly going to talk about images in the sense of, what kind of feelings they invoke having them there. So based on what you learned from the research, what are some of the things that we might change here? We have this headline, "The Power of Community Builds Financial Security for Our Members." And we have this navigation bar where we have, some basic ones like About Us and News, but then we have fraternal benefits, products, events, chapter leaders, and then some following copy, where we have security and fraternity for more than 120 years. So does anyone have any suggestions maybe where they think we could start after everything we've kind of talked about with language? So somebody wrote in, if I didn't know what a fraternal was, fraternal benefits in the navigation bar means nothing to me. So that's a good point. We have it in the copy, you know, security and fraternity, and we have fraternal benefits in the navigation bar, but we don't really, as a consumer who doesn't know anything about fraternal benefit societies or, you know, what a fraternal is, that might be a little confusing. And then take in the fact, you know, that we know how consumers feel about that word, it might give them the wrong idea about certain things. Let's see. So what does the main headline mean? Security and fraternity. So we know what security is, and that's a really strong, great word. And then, again, we have fraternity. So those two things together might be a little confusing. We have a suggestion, member benefits instead of fraternal benefits. And that's a really great point, and we'll touch on that that word member later as well, and how really great of a word that can be to use. So those are some great suggestions and answers. The subhead is nearly there, I think. So what if we changed it to, we use the power of community to provide life insurance and financial services for our members and make a difference in the world around us. It tells a slightly different story that may resonate with some consumers that it might not have before. So substituting in just a little bit of copy can make a pretty big difference in the meaning of information to consumers. We've only changed a few words in the headline and subheadline, and already I think it resonates better with consumers according to what we've learned about all this language. Take a look at your website. If you have no idea what a fraternal was, would you understand it? Is your site too concerned with communicating to existing members? There's nothing wrong with that. It's something that a site should do. But if you're serious about selling new policies, then the landing page that you're driving folks to has to speak in a way that they can understand it as well. So I'm going to switch over to Jeff now, and he's going to talk a little bit about compliance.
So you may say to yourself, but for compliance reasons, I need to call myself a fraternal. And you're right. Sometimes in some states, regulations and the way they're enforced make us use the phrase fraternal benefit society in all of our advertising and promotion. This regulation, the rules in many states and the model NAIC code clearly states the information required to be disclosed in this regulation shall not be minimized, rendered obscure, or presented in an ambiguous fashion or intermingled with the text of the advertisement so as to be confusing or misleading. So you may ask yourself, how can I participate in the brand, still comply, and use phrases like community insurer? So your website, if right now, may look like this. You know, clearly, after the logo, we're giving the heads up that we are a fraternal benefit society. Again, on the side, security and fraternity for more than 120 years. And then in the supporting copy at the bottom, Elbonian Pagan Financial is a fraternal provider of affordable and competitive financial protection, retirement options, and the ultimate cultural experience to our members and family. Now, what could we do to maybe comply with the regulation, but begin to work with some language that we know resonates with consumers? Does anybody have any suggestions that they'd like to chat into us? What might you do?
We have one, Jeff. Why not try working in community insure into the body copy?
Right. Let's go to the next slide and see what we might want to do. Here we still at the top, a fraternal benefit society. So we're still pointing that out. And in the supporting copy there, we're saying Elbonian Pagan Financial. We are a community life insurer. We provide life insurance and financial services while reinvesting our profits back into communities with everything from scholarships to food pantries. We also proudly celebrate our Elbonian culture through family activities and benefits. Now, with these changes, we could comply with the regulation. You'd still definitely need to run it through your compliance experts, but we are clearly pointing out, we're not hiding that we're a fraternal benefit society anywhere. It's still clearly pointed out. We're just working in some of the language that works that we've seen from the research, and with some very basic changes, this could potentially comply with the regulators. Now I'm going to kick it back over to Taylor, and she can talk some more about communicating our benefits.
So let's go over some easy ways to better communicate the benefits of fraternals just at a glance on that homepage. So this is another version of maybe what a homepage might look like. We have the headline, Providing Financially Sound Products to Members and Their Families Since 1914. And then we kind of have these 3 buttons below that cover different aspects of our society. So serving our gods, products, and who we are. And if you take a look at some of the copy in those buttons, we have serving pagan gods through serving others is an important part of the Elbonian Pagan Society mission. From our local charitable and volunteer events to giving back to Elbonian pagan schools and congregations, we bring the Elbonian pagan values to life. For products, we offer a wide range of products to provide protection and stability for you and your loved ones at every stage of life. And then a little who we are button, to lead you to maybe an About Us page where it covers, more than 100 years, Elbonian Pagan Society has been helping communities. So this is a pretty good way to start talking to give a better idea as a whole of who we are and what we do all together. So now looking at this as a person who's not familiar with fraternals, does it tell the story? What could we do differently? Does it tell the whole story by just looking at this one page? And at first, I'd like to start talking about the headline. It sounds a little exclusive to somebody who's not already a part of the society. Sound products to members and their families. So you start to wonder, am I a member? Is someone in my family a member? Does this really apply to me? And so this is kind of where I'll touch back on that word member. Internally, this is a really great word to use. It pulled really well with our consumers in terms of what they like to be called because it sounds very personal compared to policyholder, customer, or contributor. So internally, this is a great word, a great way to talk to your other members. But having it on your homepage and referencing that those are the people, members, are the one that you provide for, might seem kind of exclusive and shutting off new consumers who are just kind of coming into this world and just learning about it. So here's an updated version we have. Up at the top, we have a different kind of life insurer. Or we have been a different kind of life insurer since 1914, but a better kind of different. And then we also added some copy right above those buttons that talks about how unique the organization is and how the earnings are put back into the community and not into pockets. Members get life insurance, and in doing so, they help support all these charitable causes. So it kind of brings everything that's in those buttons all together. We also kind of changed up some of the copy inside the buttons. So financial products as opposed to just products. And then it also hints at, we offer a wide range of competitive products, not just products. We talk a lot about how important it is to be competitive with our products. So that's definitely a small change, but something that I think makes a really big difference. So Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit more about the ampersand.
Sure. Working the ampersand in is key. And in preparing for this webinar, we've taken a lot of time to go to a lot of different society sites and take a look. And there's some great websites out there. You guys are doing great work. One thing we did notice, though, is that, sometimes, and you can understand why this happens, the sections don't all seem to work together. something we see a lot of is that societies do a nice job of telling the fraternal story on their homepage, but maybe once we click to a product page, it may as well be from any typical kind of insurer. You know, it's important that your copy on the product page communicates important information and that it appears competitively with other insurers, but you're kind of hiding your special difference under a barrel. So let's take a look at kind of a typical financial products page. This is something you see, and you know, we do pick up a different kind of insurance company. We help you plan and give back. That's very cool. But you know, other than that, all of this copy describing the different plans, describing the whole insurance benefit, the optional features, the term life, it could all come from any sort of insurance provider. I mean, it could be MetLife, it could be anybody else. And we need, and we've seen from the research, that we need to sell kind of insurance with a difference, that ampersand, that and. We got great products and great financial solutions and insurance, and we give back. And so a lot of people, I think, and again, it's logical to see that, tend to miss this out. So let's take a look back at, you know, the research and see that ampersand, and we're going to call it the ampersand moving on, is hugely important. Providing life insurance or retirement income solutions and giving back to the community. And that's what resonates with consumers. So we took the opportunity to maybe rejigger this page a little bit, and let's take a look at what we might want to do. Again, we slipped some very simple copy and some supporting graphics into a few spots to tell the story. Our life insurance products provide protection and gives back to the community. Now, we used a graphic there that we feel, and I'm going to tease next week's webinar a little bit here. The graphic that we chose, we felt kind of described what segment floated to the top and is the most likely to be interested in fraternal messages, the passionate dabblers. These are people who are not currently giving a lot to their communities, but have a great desire to be doing more so and seek out companies who can help them do it. So we kind of select, they tend to be skew more female, so we've selected an image there that might work. And again, that's just a tease for next week. We wanted to try to work that in and show it. Again, another thing that came from the research is the financial strength, that you need to be a good financial company with good products, and showing the ratings is a great way to do that. So these are some differences that we put in, and think it might be a better way not to hide that our fraternal side from the financial page. So with that, let's take it back over to Taylor, and she can talk about burying the good stuff.
So as Jeff mentioned, we did spend some time looking through members' websites to get some ideas about, how we could change things around, or, what people are doing really well. And there were a few instances where we noticed that, some members have these great pages, but, it takes a while to get to the About Us, to what all the good things that you're doing, and to kind of piece it all together. And that's the really good stuff, the things that we want to be showing people. That's why, we're so unique. So I'm going to talk a little bit about clicks and the amount of time that people are spending on pages. How many clicks does it take just to figure out your story? Another thing for you to consider is how accessible is your story to a potential member? Does your site hide its special difference from potential members? And how long do you think a user stays on a web page before leaving? It's a perennial question, and the question is pretty much, or the answer has pretty much always been the same. Not very long. According to Nielsen, a media rating service, the average page visit lasts a little less than a minute, which I don't think is surprising. As users rush through web pages, they have time to read pretty much a quarter of the text on the pages they actually visit, let alone the pages that they don't visit. So unless your writing is extremely clear and focused, a little of what you say on your website will actually get through to the customer that's looking at it. Users are always in a hurry on the web, and the time that they spend on individual page visits varies depending on the person. Sometimes people bounce away immediately. Other times, they may linger for a little bit longer. And this is an average, so it's not the most fruitful way for analyzing, user behaviors. But users are human beings, so their behaviors are very variable, and they're not captured fully just by one single number. But in general, consumer web browsing behaviors kind of look like this graph here. It's clear from the chart that the first 10 seconds of a page visit are very crucial to users. And this is when they're going to make the decision of whether or not they're going to stay or leave. Consumers are very skeptical. They've suffered a lot of countless poorly designed web pages in the past. So people know what most web pages are useless and behave accordingly to avoid wasting more time than they need to. If the web page survives the first extremely harsh 10-second judgment, users might look around a bit. They're still highly likely to leave during the subsequent 20 seconds of their visit. So only after people have stayed on a page for about 30 seconds does the curve start to become flat. And people still leave, but at a much slower rate than they do before that. So if you can convince users to stay on your page for half a minute, there's a fair chance that they may stay longer, often 2 minutes or more. But even if you can't get them to stay that long, making sure that they can get all of the vital information in that first 30 seconds can be key. So let me ask you, how many seconds, or if you want to talk about it in terms of clicks, does it take for a consumer to figure out your story? This might be an experiment that you want to do with your website, to have someone sit down and try to figure out how long or how many clicks does it take to get the full story. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an example here with some of the previous pages we've used. So this is one of the first examples, and we decided that a potential member that was interested but unfamiliar with fraternals couldn't understand what they were looking at. The creator of this site may respond with, "It's right there. Just click About Us." So if we do that, it takes us to this page. I might still not be sure of what I'm looking at, and there's some links in there that I can click to maybe get some more information and hopefully be able to piece the whole story together. So if I were to click community, it would take me to community events, and I would definitely start to get a better idea of at least the giving back portion of what this society does. The point is to make potential members and consumers understand at a glance, like I talked about, just in case you don't hook them after those 30 seconds or even the 10 seconds, that they can get it by just looking at that main homepage. So to look at it totally in terms of clicks, it took me 3 clicks to kind of get through and start piecing together maybe the full story that I might be looking for about this society. So if we go back to an earlier example we used, we're telling the whole story right here on the home page and still providing links for detailed information if maybe this information kind of hooks them. You get the different kind of insurance company. We help you plan ahead and give back. I think there's a lot of parts of this in the headline and the copy that just reading that alone could really give you a better idea of what this society does in just one glance. So Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit about social media.
Sure. I know that a lot of you utilize social media for a variety of different reasons and to reach many audiences. It's a great way to engage with your existing members. And, some of your posts, and I just went through some of what you guys have posted, and I like these two a lot. Obviously, here's Sons of Norway. Food is a trigger for me, and who doesn't love the ultimate grilled cheese sandwich? This is a great way to connect with your members, and you guys are looking all the time at what works and what gets clicks and what gets engagement. Another holiday promotion from Catholic Financial Life is it's cute. You know, people engage with the elf on the shelf. It got a lot. You know what works for you and what gets you traction because you're looking at it every day. Today, though, I want to talk a little bit about sponsored posts. And these are posts that you might use to get new members or new customers. Maybe you use posts like this one where you utilize a pre-prepared thing from Life Happens to educate potential customers and members about life insurance. So the post may look like this. And this is great. It's very generic. And it clicks to, a great video from the Life Happens people, but it really doesn't set apart who the Elbonian Pagan Society are or what's special or different about them. Again, they're like 101 other insurers. So maybe, let's go to the next, and see with just adding a few words. So we're adding, life insurance basics, consider your questions answered. Great. Also, find out why the Elbonian Pagan Society and our benefits mean so much more than money. And at the bottom again, we're a provider of financial protection products, but with the difference of making a difference by reinvesting profits into communities. So just by adding a few words there, you're changing the whole story and having people take a look and wow, this Elbonian Pagan is very different from MetLife or very different from anybody that may be using this same kind of campaign. And these campaigns are great. They're a great way, especially if you're a society with a small budget, they're a great way to educate members on the need for life insurance, but just tweak it a little bit and you can definitely make your difference shine. Let's take a look at Twitter for a minute. Here, we're just using the graphics that come straight out of the library that you have access to, and the tweet that I'm designed here is life insurance where benefits mean so much more than money. We're the Elbonian Pagan Society, a provider of financial protection, but with a difference. We reinvest profits into communities and helping neighbors, friends, and family, and see how we can help you. And then I provide a link. So this is just another way to, not hide your difference under a bucket or something. You're definitely putting who you are right out there first and foremost, and having people see the difference and why doing business with the fraternal is different. So as we close, I want to remind you about next week's webinar. I teased it a little bit before. We're going to be talking about segmentation and who's most likely to be receptive to your message. And with that, let's open it up and see if anybody has any questions or comments, and we hope you'll share with us.
So we do have a few minutes here if anyone wants to chat in any questions. We just had a comment that came in that says the word "but" can have negative connotation. Maybe consider eliminating that from the copy. So if anyone else has any comments or questions about anything that we've gone over today, we have another question that came in. If we run a campaign on Facebook, what would the landing page be like for the new materials?
I think that the landing page should be, something that you create, and it may be your regular home page, but if your regular home page is too designed to communicate with the members you already have, you may want to take it to a different landing page where you're talking in a way that consumers who are not familiar with the fraternal world can understand what your message and what you do. So, you really need to decide that for yourself. But if you're going, like I said, if your Facebook post is speaking to your members, it can go one place. But if you're doing a sponsored post, say, and going for new members, potential members, or trying to sell insurance policies, maybe you should have it go to a different homepage. You want to be very conscious of what that landing page says, because somebody who doesn't understand what you are or what you do needs to get that, and as we saw from the research and the statistics, as quickly as possible.
Thank you. So it looks like we've had another question come in. How does changing just the explanation bring the fraternal difference into play? Referring to the life happens example that you showed. So just a little clarification on how changing the explanation really brings the fraternal difference into play.
I think just using those words, and I get it's not a perfect example. I just wanted to throw that in there because I know that life happens is something that a lot of our members belong to, and it's something that you might do. And it's just so that you, in that example, I wanted to make it so that you don't look like everybody else. So just adding a few words, ideally, maybe you would want to click to a video or whatever on your own site. But if you didn't, I think just adding a few words to educate that viewer will help.
And another question that sort of goes along with that is, how specific do we need to be about what we do?
How specific do you need to be about what you do? I'm not certain I get what you're getting at there. I don't know if you want to chat in clarification maybe to help me.
I think, and I don't know if this is what you're going for this, but it's not always about being super specific about just the fraternal side or just the life insurance side. I think what we're trying to go for is just that you're collectively talking about both. That was a big piece that we kind of saw mirrored throughout websites, was that there's this disconnect, this wall between the two. With so many consumers pointing out that they really, a big benefit or the attribute that they want to hear you talk about is the fact that you provide financial security and you give back. I think the big disconnect there is that it's just so important to talk about both and not just one or the other, or to talk about them separately in different places. It's really helpful to talk about both all together and really get that and in there.
And also, we're not asking you to be general in any way about the good that you do in the community. If most of your fraternal activities supports Catholic schools, that's cool to say, to be that specific. Obviously, I don't think you want to go deep into that on the home page because, again, we're getting it, like Taylor said, they need to understand at a glance. But your supporting materials in your deeper pages, absolutely, toot your own horn and go into the good that you do and the things that you do.
And we had another comment come in that goes along with this that makes a very good point. If you've looked at all through that last segmentation packet, that definitely speaks a lot to this because it definitely gives you a better idea of what to say and who to say it to in terms of demographics. So we'll cover that all completely. But Jeff touched on it slightly in the products page where we kind of added that banner with a picture and the, are you looking for security and giving back? We made that page and very likely that we'll include that in the next presentation so we can kind of touch back on it. I made that page specifically based on one of the segments that Maddox Douglas pointed out would be very likely to purchase from a fraternal benefit society. And so in terms of being that specific, gauging things towards certain demographics, you'll get more information on that in the next webinar, definitely.
So we had another question come in. From a compliance standpoint, would it make sense to confer with state regulators on our redesigned website to make sure it passes their compliance standards before we publicly unveil our new website?
As far as the procedures on that, I would defer to your compliance counsel, whether you do it in-house or utilize a consultant or whatever. In any given state, I don't want to give guidelines here. But I would just say check with either your house counsel or your compliance counsel as far as what you should do moving forward before really unveiling any redesigned website.
Great, thank you. We have just a few minutes left here. If anyone has any additional questions, be sure to just chat those in on your computer. If you have any additional questions that you think of after the fact, you've got Jeff's email up on the screen there. Feel free to reach out to him directly. He'll be able to help you that way as well. So we just want to give everyone a couple more seconds here if they have any questions. Okay, and with that, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to launch a very brief survey here just to let you give us an idea of what you thought of today's webinar, and be on the lookout for a confirmation email for next week's webinar on segmentation. So thank you to our presenters, and thank you all for joining us.